My name is Andy Meverett, and welcome to this Action Workshop sponsored by CB America Chaplaincy. This is the third year I've been able to be here since I became the Director of Chaplaincy for CB America. And one of the things that I saw when I came for the very first time, and I saw we invited our chaplains in the area and outside, was the benefit not only to the chaplains, but to the veterans and pastors and others who came to our seminars. And so I'm really pleased to be here, and I trust this will be a helpful time for you. Are you going to do the how many veterans, or should I do that for you real quick? I'd like to know how many veterans do we have in the audience today? God bless you. Thank you for your service. Do we have anybody currently either in the National Guard, Reserve component, or active duty? Anybody snuck in, got a chance? I didn't think so. I retired, put in a combined just under 40 years in the U.S. military, in the Army, 14 years enlisted, so I know what it's like to be a grunt. I rose to the rank of E6 Staff Sergeant, then direct commissioned 02 to chaplain, and then retired as an 06. I only share that because it's a lot better than an 04 as far as retirement goes and stuff like that. But it has given me experience at all kinds of levels, and it also has qualified me to be an endorsing agent. I was just at Fort Lee, Virginia, visiting one of our chaplains. He set up a great itinerary, and in that included visits with the brigade chaplain and the battalion chaplain at the U.S. Army Sustainment Center of Excellence. They train 72,000 sustainment soldiers a year, third largest training base in the United States. And I sat down with the commander, and my chaplain was amazed how we connected. When he found out that I was a retired 06, he asked me questions about what was going on at the Pentagon, because I'm on the Armed Forces Chaplain. Anyway, it was a great time. And at the end I said, would it be okay if I prayed for you? He said, oh, chaplain, I'd really like that. And this young chaplain goes, man, he never asked me to pray for him like that, you know. So it's one of those things, it's the handshake. But anyway, today we are pleased. We actually are conducting sessions on moral injury, PTSD, and healing from two perspectives. One of our chaplains, Dean Benura, yesterday started off. We had 43 people for that. And so today we've got back again by popular demand from the Puget Sound VA Healthcare Center, Chaplain Gary Cowden.
It's really an honor to be here, and I just appreciate the privilege to be with you all. I am the Chief of Chaplain Service for Puget Sound VA, and that is a whole story in itself. But one of my great interests as the head chaplain, I have a team of 8 chaplains plus another 13 students, and to teach them to be involved in their development as chaplains and to set direction for the department is just really, really exciting. For me, it's the greatest thrill of my life, and it seems to be the culmination of a lot of all my ministry experience kind of culminating in this, and I'm delighted to be here. But moral injury, PTSD, has become for me sort of a passion, an engagement, a thing to try to help our veterans with this very, very difficult reentry of life. I have 2 handouts. You should have one here called Moral Injury. This I just pirated. I was last week back at the National Chaplain Center in Hampton, Virginia. We had a week of meetings. They brought all the chief chaplains from all over the country together for a convocation held at Newport News, and one of the presenters was Chaplain David McElwain, and this is sort of the fruit of some of his work, and I just pirated it. But the major benefit. How many of you work in the area of counseling? Pastoral counseling, okay, there are some of you. So you're familiar with the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, DSM 4 and DSM-5, and that's your Bible that you work with in mental health. The thing that will be helpful on this page is this graphic at the bottom, which differentiates PTSD. I hate, by the way, that title. It's wrong. It should be post-traumatic stress injury. It's not a disorder. I don't care what the shrinks say. It's not a disorder. It's an injury. And it differentiates PTSI from moral injury, which has some commonality. You see that part, that slice in the middle: anger and nightmares and anxiety, insomnia, depression, avoidance, panic attacks, so often self-medication. Somebody who is doing an assessment, mental health assessment on a veteran and sees any of these can immediately think, there's a PTSD candidate, and will assign the diagnosis of post-traumatic stress. It may not, in fact, be. It might indeed be a moral injury, which has some of the same criteria. Although you'll notice in that diagram, the author has differentiated. PTSD is coming from a fear base. And that's, anybody who's been in a combat situation, my goodness, the level of fear is so high, and it's burned into the low brain, and so they have that recurring stuff. Well, fear is going to be a huge deal. Anybody who's not been afraid in combat's an idiot. So if you have half a brain and you're in combat, you're going to have great fear. But you notice the moral side, it's not fear-based, it's shame-based. And so guilt and shame are the things that incur this issue for a veteran. And I have had so many veterans who have spoken about their combat experience in terms of shame and in terms of guilt. I should have done, or I wished I had done, or something of that nature, in the sense of oh my, you just wouldn't have believed what I had to do. And one of the things that we oftentimes, when we greet a veteran, are encouraged to say is, thank you for your service. For many of our veterans, that is not an appropriate response, because in the back of their mind, they may be saying, you don't know what I had to do. If you knew what I did, you would not thank me. And that's that guilt and shame base that's coming. And not at all to suggest that every combat veteran is racked by guilt and shame, but so many of them are. So I don't use thank you for your service anymore. I instead would thank a veteran for his or her sacrifice, because every person who's put on the uniform has sacrificed something. And some of our veterans who have put on the uniform and did not come home sacrificed everything. So thank you for your sacrifice is probably a more appropriate. But anyway, so if you look at, and those of you who are in the mental health field, if you see the differentiation between the PTSD diagnoses and moral injury, psychologists and psychiatrists aren't so keen about looking at regret and shame and alienation and doubt and hopelessness. They can't get their arms around that. And honestly, there is not a prescription medication that solves this. There isn't. And PTSD, if you're a psychiatrist in the VA, you want to shovel off some medication and make the guy feel better. Excuse me. There is no medication to make a guy feel better if the issue is a spiritual one. And so the second page is sort of what we do, if you want to break it down. I'm indebted to those who have done, I'm not a researcher, those who have done research and written papers. I don't write papers, I read them, but I hate writing, and so I don't write. But this is the fruit of a lot of really solid thinking in the area of moral repair. Somebody who is suffering a moral injury, likely the definition here is perpetrating, failing to prevent, or bearing witness to acts that transgress deeply held moral beliefs. One could also insert the concept of betrayal. The issue of betrayal, feeling betrayed by your maybe a senior NCO who put you in a bad position, or maybe a company commander who required an action that you wished you didn't have to do, or maybe just even engaging in warfare at all that you think was a stupid policy, and you're feeling betrayed by the Joint Chiefs or the government. For those Vietnam era veterans, how many Vietnam era veterans are there in here? Any of you feel betrayed by your country when you came home? Huh? Any of you called names? Or, I mean, when I didn't go to Vietnam, I went to Germany, but when I came home, I immediately took the uniform off, because if you wore the uniform in public, you were a target for scorn. And there's a lot of feelings of betrayal that veterans have for the country. They sent them out, the country sent them to war, and then when the veteran came back, the country turned on the veteran. And so there's a lot of sense of betrayal. So betrayal is the big issue in moral injury. I want to make one corrective to the first handout, the moral injury handout. In the third paragraph, these issues all can be causes of shame and guilt as a result of violating the warrior code. Well, I would suggest moral injury does not have to be a violation of the warrior code at all. If you are a warrior and you went to war and you practiced your art of warfare within the rules of engagement, did everything right, did what you were told, did everything according to the book, you still could come home with a very severe moral injury, because warfare is a hellish thing, and it involves the destruction of people and property. And there is just no way to sugarcoat that in your heart. There isn't. When you take another human life, there is a wound that has occurred to two people. The one who received the injury and the one who gave it. And so I would suggest that you may not violate the warrior code at all. In fact, you may be a highly decorated warrior who worked completely within the rules of engagement and still have a serious moral injury. There's a recent movie, if you've seen American Sniper. Anybody seen American Sniper? Chris Kyle contends that he will stand before his maker and give an account for every shot he took. And he feels morally justified with every shot he took. And yet the movie is still sort of an example of somebody who suffers a moral injury and stress from the battlefield. Y'all agree? I mean, the stuff he goes through coming home. So now, here are eight things that clinicians have identified that are helpful in terms of repairing the soul following combat experience. First of all, a caring and respectful therapeutic relationship. I think this is one of the most important things for me as a chaplain, to establish a relationship with a veteran, that they know I love them and care for them, and that they are safe in this relationship. Absolutely critical. If they think I am only there to punch in the clock, pick up my paycheck, and whatever, I mean, I've lost them. A caring and respectful therapeutic relationship is critical. And honestly, for you mental health professionals, I've got, if you want to talk to me later, I've got some suggestions about types of therapies to use. But in truth, I have the feeling that any therapy will work if it starts with a caring and respectful and loving therapeutic relationship. Some others you may disagree and have evidence-based for this or that therapies. That's all important. That's all good. But if you don't have the connection with the veteran, don't go forward. Secondly, have a plan of action. Have something, a track to run on that is helpful. A veteran wants to know that there is some sort of a plan in place. Here's where we're going. Here's the direction we're going to move toward. And I try to let veterans know what they're going to be looking at for the next few months as we work together. Third, focused emotional reliving. This is frightening for a veteran. I often use the the word picture of sailing into the wind. Anybody here own a sailboat or do any sailing? If you're a sailor, if you have any experience on the water at all, you're out there on the water in your boat, in your sailboat, and a storm blows in. The last thing you want to do is get caught sideways to the wind, right, in a sailboat. That's not good. You don't want to be sideways to the wind. Most inexperienced sailors try to come about and race for port. They get to port before the storm. But the trouble is the wind is always faster than the boat. The wind will outrun the boat. And so the storm will come to you. You don't have to worry about it. It's going to come to you. So the wise sailor, the experienced sailor, comes around, points the bow into the storm, into the wind. Now the water's going to get choppy, right? It's going to get bumpy. But this whole point of emotional reliving for a veteran means I'm going to relive these experiences. I'm going to talk about them, I'm going to share them, I'm going to write about them. I'm going to open this can of worms. For many veterans, they have not told their story to anybody. And they're waiting for a safe place, and they're holding this in their heart. And we want them to unpack that. So focused emotional reliving is just so crucial. And that means that I have to be with them, because sometimes when you start unpacking this crud, it's pretty ugly stuff. And it can re-trigger, and it can cause all sorts of emotional stuff's going to get kicked up. So I need to be present. That goes back to that caring and respectful therapeutic relationship. Okay? But do not shy away from hearing the story. So many veterans have come to me and said, "Chaplain, I've never told this to anyone before." Got to tell you a real quick story. Time is short, but I was doing my rounds, just normal rounds in the hospital, and sat down with this veteran. He was a Korean War veteran. And I said, "Hey, Henry, good to see you. I'm Chaplain Cowden. How you doing?" "Oh, I'm doing okay." "Well, you're a veteran. Where'd you serve?" And he said, "Oh, I never talk about that." When a chaplain hears, "Oh, I never talk about that," that's code language for me to sit down, pull up my chair, and lean in. And I did that. I pulled up my chair and I leaned in and said nothing. And there was this dead silence for about 10 seconds or 15 seconds. 15 seconds of dead silence is a lot of time. For someone who gets paid for talking, that's a long time. So pretty soon he started to talk. And he told his story of Korea. And oh my gosh, his story was unbelievable. What happened to him in Korea. And when he finished his story, and it was like Achilles, and he went berserk and took out a North Korean machine gun nest, and yeah, it was just horrible. And he's been given citations for, this was valid stuff. And when he finished, he said, "Chaplain, you're the first person I've ever told that story to." And he said, "Chaplain, I have not had a night's sleep in 35 years. I'm wakened at night by these horrible feelings. I caused a lot of death, and I really feel bad about it." And I said, he was an old Southern Baptist guy, his background was Southern Baptist. I said, "Well, you know what God says about that, don't you?" And his eyes got really big, and he got really fearful. And he just knew I was going to hammer him, because he and God had sort of been distant for a while. I said, "Jesus said, 'Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall see God.' They'll be called children of God. You are a peacemaker. You brought peace to a village that was having their young boys executed, ritually executed, to bring fear to the American and the Allied forces. You saved those boys. You rescued the village. You brought peace there. There are people alive today that would not be alive, families that would not exist had you not acted as you are. And God says, blessed are the peacemakers. He said, really? I said, yeah. And we prayed together. I saw him again 2 days later. He said, Chaplain, I had the first full night's sleep in 35 years. Moral repair. But focused emotion reliving. Fourth, examination of core assumptions about self. Do you feel like you're worthless? Do you feel like you're unworthy? Do you feel guilty? Do you feel like God could never forgive you? Do you feel like somehow God abandoned you on the field and left you to suffer combat alone? What are the feelings? And that's got to be unpacked. And what at the very core, who are you? One of my exercises in one of my groups, I asked this, if you stripped away all of the contingent things, how do you define yourself? I mean, you can't define yourself as husband because your wife may leave you or she may get cancer and die. You may be single tomorrow. You can't define yourself as a father because the same thing could happen to your children. Something could happen to them. What's your core? At the very core, how do you define yourself? And I was trying to inch them to come up and say, oh, I'm a child of God. That's the core. That's who I am. This one veteran went home and he pondered it all week long. Turned it over in his mind 1,000 different ways. Talked to his wife. At the deepest level, and he was struggling with serious post-traumatic stress and moral injury from some stuff that happened in the Gulf War. And he came back the next group. You'll remember, I think. And he came back to the next group and he said, at the deepest level of self, I am a good man. That was his definition. I am a good man. What happened on the battlefield is not definitional. At the deepest level, I am a good man. And that was the beginning of his healing in the moral injury piece. Reconnection with God to experience forgiveness and restoration. This is so important, and we don't jump into it right away, but over time we begin to get veterans to reconnect with God, to offer forgiveness, to ask forgiveness, to receive forgiveness, to forgive themselves. And there's different ways to do that. I don't particularly like the empty chair. You put a chair like the AA does, and you claim this higher power in whatever fashion. I'm not particularly big proponent of that or fan of it, but others in the literature talk about the empty chair, have an empty chair, and let that be the moral authority. I become the moral authority in some parts. They see me as a pastor, as a chaplain, as a representative of God, and I can bring to them scriptures. Here's what God says about this situation. And that has some authority when Scripture is speaking. For some, it can be very releasing. But reconnection with God to experience forgiveness. Within that, too, I would add rituals. We Baptists aren't big on rituals. We're not. That's not our strong suit. Having rituals, candles and bells and stuff. We're not really hot on that. But I would suggest if you're working with someone who was deeply traumatized, a ritual can be really releasing. Writing down the issues and burning them on an altar, or having them having sin shredded in a shredding bin, you be creative, but have some ritual that lets them process their stuff and let it go. And you can be as creative as you want. I don't think God is at all inhibited or upset by our ritualizing things. That's a good thing. Sixth, find decency and goodness as a vehicle for self-forgiveness and repair. Have a project. Have your veteran do something, build something, restore a car, plant a garden, get into art, painting or sculpture, something that creates beauty and harmony. Is there an uglier place on earth than a battlefield? It's bloody, it's gory, it's loud. Explosions and light and smells and everything and mud and it is the grossest thing on the planet, a battlefield. So if you've had battlefield experience, you've seen the worst, you've seen the ugliest. Okay, So we need to create the opposite. So create beauty and harmony. Do something that contributes to the environment that is beautiful. I've encouraged guys to work on a Harley. Take a motorcycle and make it gorgeous. There's a lot of good therapy in restoring a car or doing something of that nature. Seventh, seek positive and lasting and healing relationships outside of therapy. It's not enough that they begin to bond with one another in a group situation. Once they begin comfortable in a group, now we got to step out of the group and find healing relationships elsewhere. A local church, a VA chapel could be a stepping stone to a wider religious experience. Reconnecting with family and friends. Who were your friends before you went off to war? Maybe you've pushed them away when you came back. Maybe your behavior scared them away. Begin to reconnect with family and friends. And lastly, plan for the long haul. It's seldom a one-time deal that does this. It takes time to sit with a veteran and work with them in their struggle. It is a struggle. So these are things that you can do, and there are resources if you're a pastor or a counselor, resources that I could give you. Chaplain Bonnurin could, I mispronounced your name, Bonnurin. Tell me your name. Bonura. Sorry, my friend. Just become a Smith or a Jones. That'd be helpful. That we can give you some resources that might help you in your work. And if you are a veteran yourself, form a group with other veterans and just start. I got some resources you can use in groups that would be very helpful. I've got two guys that want to share a little bit of their personal experience. I'm going to start with Al Yonker. Al, would you come and just tell us just briefly how moral repair has changed your life?
Okay, I got that at the right distance. So yeah, I grew up in a little farm, dairy, timber community at the base of Mount Rainier. I grew up in the Ward and June Cleaver household. That's what my parents were like, very loving, caring, protective, safe environment, small town, everybody knew everybody. Everybody helped keep me out of trouble when I was growing up. After high school, I went to vocational school for 3 years, and I didn't want to go to college. My mom's dream was I was going to be a pharmacist, but I couldn't do college, so went to vocational school. I got my aircraft mechanic certificates, and then I continued on and went through their flight program, got my flight credentials, and wasn't quite done with that, and I knew my deferment was up, and I went into Seattle to see the people at the draft board and see if I could get a few more months, and nope, can't do that. What's your name? A lady's going through her outbox, and she says, "Oh, you want us to mail this to you?" Yeah. I said, "No, I'll take it." So anyway, I'm chicken. I thought, well, don't want to be a grunt, don't want to be on the ground, be involved in combat, so the Navy, that'd be good. So I went and talked to them, and 4 years. I mean, that's 2 lifetimes when you're that age, and Air Force, same thing. And Marines was 4, but if you volunteered to be a ground pounder, you could get away with 2. And I said, no, I don't want to do that. Anyway, I joined on the 120-day delay enlistment program, and I finished there at Clover Park, and one of my best friends dropped me off at the induction center. He'd already been over and done his thing and was back and was driving his new 69 Chevelle, and so I'm going, well, that's okay. I signed up for avionics equipment repairman. I'm going, well, that'll help me as a mechanic. I'll learn something, and I kind of liked electricity, so it was a really good school. Went to 5 or 6 months at Fort Gordon, and I'm good. I'll be working in an air-conditioned van, right? And so I get over there, and the 101st had a little in-country training program. It seemed like it was a couple of weeks, and indoctrination, and get to fire all the weapons and do all that good stuff, rappel out of towers, and so everybody's getting their orders for their next assignment. And I'm back there, I get assigned to an infantry unit. I said, no, wait a minute. I'm a 35 Lima. Well, there's no slots open for you. So anyway, I was very blessed. Did that for a little bit. They got lots of mortars up at Camp Evans, and so they had ambush patrols trying to find the bad guys shooting the mortars at us. Then I got sent down to an aviation unit at Camp Eagle. I'm going, all right. Get down there, and the only slot open was the avionics repair guy for the colonel's helicopter. And of course, headquarters company is right next to Alpha Company, and there's no equipment there or anything, so, well, Alpha Company takes care of the colonel's helicopter, so we're going to put you in a commo section. So I'm plugging in wires and routing phone calls at night, and then did that for a few nights, and then part of that deal was we were detailed for ambush patrol around Camp Eagle, and I'm going, no, wait a minute. I'm an avionics guy, Well, this is what we're going to do. So saw some bad stuff at that, and a guy by the name of Sergeant Bill Hunt heard I was over there, and he came over and saved me. He was with the Kingsmen, took me over. I got to work in an air-conditioned van. And so I was there a little bit. I was the only married guy, and he said, there's a flight status spot open. How'd you like to do that? And I said, well, what does that mean? He said, well, you got to fly so many hours a month, but it's $55 a month. I said, sign me up. So then there was guys that were on leave and R&R, and while we needed to be door gunner today, and then pretty soon one thing leads to another, and it was okay because it was pretty quiet at that time. And then in early '71, they started up Operation Lomson 719, and so I was involved in that. Saw some bad things, did some bad things. Came home in one piece, no owies, 11 months and 2 weeks, and got assigned to Hunter Army Airfield, did my last 9 months or so there. Got out 6 months early, so I only actually spent 2.5 years in instead of the 3. And so I get on with my life and having kids and working, and you get real busy, and you're able to forget about all that stuff. I had my 7-year commitment of inactive reserves, and I didn't want to go to the reunions or talk to anybody or know anything about that stuff. And I packed up all the stuff I was supposed to have, and I stuck it up in the rafters of the garage. And when I got that letter saying, hey, you're officially released from inactive reserves, I took everything I had and took it to the dump. So you work really hard, and you're busy raising your kids and making a living, and you manage to compartmentalize all that stuff and put it away, forget about it for the most part. And then later on, things start to change, and so we had moved in the early '90s to a different neighborhood, and it was kind of a retired military guy's neighborhood. And one of my neighbors, who was he was with the 1st Cav, a helicopter pilot, pretty intuitive guy. He asked me if I'd ever checked in with the VA, and I said, nah, I don't need those guys. He says, you really ought to go check in out there. And what he was saying was, you need some help, buddy. And my wife, about the same time, my wife said, you need to get some counseling. No, I'm fine. So that went on from about 93 to 2012, and a couple of guys came around. They were campaigning for local office, and one was a dust-off pilot, and one was a 11 Bravo Nom, and got to talking, and they could sense that I needed some help, and they said, you ought to go check in. So finally, I was starting to think about retirement, and I'm concerned about health care benefits and everything, and I thought, well, all right, I'll prove all these guys wrong. I'll go check in. So I checked in early 2013, had my first appointment in June of 2013, and the docs, they pick up on this right away. I mean, I don't even remember the questions they asked me, but I was basically rolled up in a ball on the floor. And so he said, you know, we can help you with this. He says, how long's it been? 43 or whatever years? And I said, yeah, right. Yeah, you can't help me. Had to come out Tuesday. This was Saturday morning. I had to come out Tuesday to get my blood drawn because I didn't do that before. And I was on the way to find the lab. There's a sign up here, mental health. Well, no, I back up to Monday morning. I'm at the hangar. Phone rings, 8 o'clock. This lady from mental health says, so, how are you doing today? I said, oh, I'm fine. She says, well, that's not what Dr. Opp said. And so, anyway, I thought about that for a little bit. She said, you know, we're here 24/7. We can help you. Went out next morning to get my blood drawn. I see the sign. They can't help me. All the bad stories about the VA and long waits for treatment and everything going around. And got my blood drawn, came back down, signs pointing the other way because I'm going the other way. And almost got to the front door, and I thought, okay, just to get these people off my back, I'm just going to go prove them wrong. I'll never be able to get in. It'd be 6 months before I can get an appointment. So I went back, and the lady at the desk, I think was the lady that called me the morning before, and I told her who I was and wanted to make an appointment. And she said, well, why don't you just sit down across the hall over there, and Dr. Kane doesn't have anybody with her right now. So anyway, Mary Catherine Kane referred me to Gary instead of drugs, and it was a first step in a long journey to healing. I know I'll never be completely normal, but it's a work in process, and it's been an incredible journey. And got a gentleman in the audience who is a fellow employee with this company. He worked out of the Anchorage office. He was office manager up there, and I had our former boss and CEO and his wife. They were out traveling, and Barney was he served in Germany a little before Vietnam. Vietnam was spooling up, and so they were leaving, and I gave him a challenge coin like Andy gave me last year. Is Andy still here? Is he? Yeah. And of course, the rest, I should back up. Andy gave me this coin. I'm going, wow, that's the first challenge coin I've ever had. So I was going to carry that in my pocket forever. And I carried it around for 2 or 3 months, and I lost it. So then I had to get in contact with Andy and find out where he got it. And I ordered a dozen, I think. And then in the last year, I'd meet guys, and I'd see them, and we'd talk, and I'd give them the challenge coin. I gave them all away. So I ordered some more, and I gave one to Barney as he was leaving, and Barney was visiting with Tony and his wife, and their son apparently has some issues, and Barney passed that challenge coin on to Lindy. So it's hard, but it's a great thing. All those years I said more swear words and bad language, and I used to go around looking for reasons to get angry at people. Just crazy. I mean, my wife's life must have been miserable, but it's better now. She's a lot happier. In spite of the tears, I'm a lot happier. So if you are depressed and you don't know what's going on, I went out there because I was depressed and I wasn't happy, and I had no reason to be depressed. I had the world by the tail. I had the best general aviation flying job in the Pacific Northwest. Worked with a bunch of great people. My wife loved me. 5 grandkids, all healthy, you know. And so I saw Dr. Kane and visited with her for an hour or so, and she referred me to Gary, which psychologists don't do. She said, let's approach this from a spiritual standpoint. And so she referred me to Gary, and so it's been an incredible journey. My good friend Jack here was in our group. So if you aren't feeling right, and you're depressed, and you're angry, and you got all those symptoms that Gary was talking about, go get some help. So anyway, thanks for listening. Thank you, Gary.
You'll have opportunity to ask questions in a little bit, but let's hear from Jack Campbell. Jack?
There, that's a lot easier. So I saw there was some Vietnam vets in here. Any Tet Vietnam vets in here? Tet. T-E-T. Tet Offensive. Yeah, Tet Offensive was in 1967, 68. I was in the Air Force. I was there at Tuiwa, which was hit. I grew up in a very loving home. My father was not religious, but my mother made sure that I went to church all dressed up every single Sunday. And I grew up all the way to youth camps, and I was president of the youth group in California for a couple of years. And I just want to let you know I had a very religious background. I was an armament, weapons mechanic. That means we loaded bombs on aircraft, or we worked in the air hangar repairing aircraft, weapon systems. What I didn't realize, I joined the Air Force because I figured it was the safest entity to join. We didn't have it as bad as the Marines and the Army. I got to admit that. But boy, my experiences put me right up in there. I did not realize I was being trained for a very special operations group called RAM. Anybody know what RAM is? RAM is a rapid area response team for maintenance. And our team in armament was based out of McClellan. Well, the last few months that I was in Tuiwa, I didn't realize that the division I was sent to was training for the RAM team. But I was sure getting promoted fast. By my third year, I was Staff Sergeant E5. But once we got to McClellan, I learned that there was 24 of us there, and our orders came from the President of the United States. It was a special division. We would go places and train some foreign countries on the aircraft that we would more likely sold to them, like F-86s. I bet nobody's worked on one of those. Well, I was being trained on T-28s, prop jobs from World War II. And I'm going, what am I being trained on this for? Well, come to find out that I was called to the base and said, you're packing your bags, you're going away for some time. And I says, where am I going? Well, we'll tell you when you get there. And I thought, well, that's interesting. I'm going to tell my wife that one. I just married her a few months earlier. And I had to ask the guy on the airplane where we were going. And he said, well, we're going to Thailand. You don't know where we're going? And I says, no, I had no clue I was going to Thailand. Well, when I got to Thailand, I was assigned to Det 1 at Udorn, which was CIA, Air America. And from there, I ended up in Laos. When you're sent into Laos and you're a ground crew, you're not allowed to have a weapon, believe that or not. But I was allowed to have a 45. And because I flew in, if you were an Air Force pilot or you were accompanying like a two-seater T-28, you could carry a weapon. So I was able to carry a handgun. I didn't know any of this when I was sent in there. And what my basic mission was to help the Hmong Laotian Air Force repair their armament systems on their T-28 aircraft. And I asked before I left, I said, why am I going there and you're not bringing them here? Well, they were in such bad shape, they weren't allowed on a US base. And let me tell you, these planes never were serviced, ever. To make a long story short, I'm not going to go into great detail, but the team I was with, I only knew them by their first names. We never knew each other or what the other guy was doing. We were based in an area called LS 201. It's roughly about 60 miles from North Vietnam. And we were surrounded one evening. It was December 31st, 1969. And a forward air controller, and I'm just going to call his name Jim, had airplane troubles. I had met him several times while I was in Laos, and he landed, and he couldn't take off his plane. And he says, this place is going to get hit, so we need to prepare for it. And I had no clue that this man was sent to me by God. There is no doubt about it in my mind. That man saved my life that night. He showed me in our bunker area how to put the sand. I had no clue. I was in the Air Force. We didn't know any of this stuff. He showed me how to put the sandbags around me. He told me to get to the right-hand side of the bunker. You know, put the sandbags all around you, not in front, but all the way around you. And he had the Hmong Army give me an M16 rifle with ammo. And I'm telling you, those people never cleaned a gun in their lives. And I ended up in the next 3 hours cleaning everybody's gun. And the night came. We became under attack in late evening. I think it was early January 1st. I don't remember too much about it. But they were hitting us with rockets and mortars. And for the size of the hole that was in our bunker, it had to be a 2.75 rocket that hit us. It killed 4 of my comrades. I was knocked out and blown 2 feet in one direction. I had shrapnel on my left arm and the left side of my face. And when I woke up, I couldn't hear anything. I couldn't barely see anything because all I saw was a flash of light. And the Hmong soldiers just kept showing me to shoot at the runway. You know, he says, shoot, shoot, you know. And it's real strange when you can't kind of see anything. You're still kind of wondering, what on earth is going on? Where am I? And, but that night Jim and I were the only survivors in our American team. And Jim really wasn't part of our team. And that man stayed with me until I was air evac'd out. And there was Dennis also, he was air evac'd out, but Dennis didn't make it. 2 minutes? Okay. So we're going to switch over to out of that area into my PTSD. I had PTSD for 43 years and didn't know it. I had seizures almost all my life. Smells would set me off, triggers. Defecation smell. Gun smoke would set me off. 4th of July fireworks would set me off. And I was a total mess. I spent over $300,000 in medical. I finally got together with the VA in Seattle, where my wife and I moved up there. And I spent some 300 days up there, on and off, through the years, from 2009. And I had a lot of help and a lot of guidance. And if you're even think you have PTSD, start writing your story, everything about it, even though it's really hard. And you can keep it to yourself. But if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have been able to handle the PTSD portion of it the way I've been able to. But I was still falling down, and there was something else wrong with me, and I didn't know what it was. And I walked into Gary's office one day because I said, I need help. I have nobody to give my problems to. And that night, I thought I had lost the Lord. I had to kill women and children that night that were attacking me and my comrades. And when you're under attack, you're going to protect your comrades at all cost. Your life doesn't mean anything anymore. You want your comrade to go home. Well, with Gary's help, I took a class with him called Combat Trauma. And in that, I learned that I had to forgive those who had done something wrong with me, or I had done something wrong with them. And the biggest thing was I had to forgive myself. Let me tell you, that was a big move. Well, I was finally, after 9 months, able to do that. Then I was awarded the Purple Heart after 43 years at a ceremony at American Lake. Then, this last year, the Air Force has decided to take that Purple Heart away from me. They said because I didn't have an eyewitness. Well, everybody who was with me in Laos is dead. And they said, well, there's no record of you ever being there. And I'm going, well, when you awarded me the Purple Heart, you said you verified all my records. I even had a medical record showing it, although most of it was blanked out, but they still decided to remove it. Without God's help and believing in God, I would be a total wreck today. Okay? I had my ceremony, one of the most beautiful ceremonies you've ever seen for the Purple Heart. And with dignitaries and everyone, I had a congressman who pinned it on me. They can't ever take that away from me. Okay? I know I was wounded. And that Purple Heart was for my comrades. And I'm never going to give it up. I'm still fighting it because I'm a fighter. Those in the military are fighters. But tell your story to your family. And if you need help, get help. Because you won't cure yourself in PTSD. I firmly believe that. But you can control it. You can control your life. And it's amazing what it opens up to once you do that. You know? It's just the love and the giving and people giving back to you and the anger it's just gone. And you know how to control that if you see it coming. My seizures stopped the day I was awarded the Purple Heart. My seizures have started again, but I'm able to control it. Okay? Because I have God's help. Okay? So, that's my story.
Andy, would you come? And Don, would you come? Al, and if you have any questions.
Yeah, we're going to take a little Q&A, a little panel type thing. So come on up, Al, Chaplain Dean, if you'd come on up too. So understand this. 2 veterans, 2 veteran chaplains, okay? So moral injury, PTSD, PTSI, whatever like that. What questions would you like to ask? And if you'd want to direct the question, I'll pass the microphone to whoever. So if you would stand up, say, I'd like to ask a question of? Yeah, come on in closer. Oh, cameras. There you go. Yeah, we'll get you guys in there. I'm ugly. Question. Hand. And who would you like the question directed to? Or, go. Okay.
I was just wondering, if you have a close friend that is struggling with the PTSD, what do you do for him as a friend?
Okay, if you have a friend who's struggling with PTS, what do you do as a friend? Who would like to handle that?
Well, I'll answer, and then I know everyone has. You have a friend that's struggling with this. Be a good listener. Offer your respect. Let them know that honor them for what they did. Recognize that whatever they're going through, it may be not something that you need to just say thank you for your service kind of thing, as we've repeated here. Yeah, that might not be the good thing because of what they're going through. But if you could get them to talk about what they've experienced by providing that safe and trusting relationship, since he's a friend or she's a friend, then that's a beginning. Because just talking about it, revisiting what occurred there, will help them. So that's a number of things that can be done.
Yeah, I would, I think, just tell them that encourage them that there is help out there. I don't know where your friend lives, but there is help out there. And I think what I've been sharing with some of the groups that I've given my testimonial to is just encourage them to get help. I didn't think I needed help. I just knew I had all these other symptoms, even though I had neighbors and my wife and other people tell me, you need to get some help. I don't know what the answer is for these people to that's, I mean, God got me pointed in the right direction. There's no other answer for that. I mean, it's unexplainable. I mean, even when your wife tells you 20-some years ago you need to get some help and you don't listen to your wife, who are you going to listen to? But just things, yeah, I don't know.
I would just say, too, send them to the VA, and the VA is doing some really, really good work.
Yeah, let me just remind you, there are veteran service officers at the county level. Every county has at least one, depending on its size. And then there are veteran service officers at the state levels, the Departments of Military and Veterans Affairs, usually under the National Guard. They also are a resource. And then you've got the community-based outpatient clinics throughout the United States, throughout the states. And then you've got the VISNs, Veterans Integrated Service Networks. States are divided up, and those are good places as well. But don't forget yourself, and don't forget your church, okay? And don't forget men's breakfasts. Don't forget men's Bible studies, a place where, especially look, these guys, I'm sorry, these guys aren't young, but we've got a whole crop. You're excused. You're excused. Yeah, but we've got between 1.5 and 1.7 million, something like that, right? Of people who have been to combat in the last 12, 14 years, men and women, you know, even truck drivers. They were some of the most dangerous jobs out there. Transportation people, you know, what 88 mics was the MOS.
You know, the Army has an acronym for those who are suicidal: Ask, Care, Escort, ACE. And that's why, you know, you have the relationship. They're not going to necessarily go to VA because you said so. Maybe you need to take them and show that you care. And so I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, you're right. Sometimes you need someone to say, I'll go with you. Yeah. Yes, sir. Question. There you go. Yeah, right. You're a former Marine. Once a Marine, always a Marine. And what area do you guys service? So throughout the... Right. Point Man Ministries. Look it up. They've got a website.
It's a great organization, and we coordinate with Point Man. We coordinate with Point Man in Puget Sound. There's a Point Man Ministries out of Tacoma, based out of near Joint Base Lewis McChord. Excellent organization.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there. Yes, sir.
I just want to say to that fellow over there, the best thing to do for your friend is be there, to listen to him. That is the best thing that could help him. I myself, I'm personally 100% disabled, PTSD, 3 tours, riverboats, 68, 69. And things happened. I look at it as it's history, it's over. I'm too old for them to take me back, fortunately.
We don't want you.
Thank you. I don't want to go. Some hints that he did that helped him. And a lot of, and
That's right. That's the best thing. Yeah. Yeah, affinity groups. Another question. We'll have to wrap it up here soon. Okay, I've got some resources Yes, sir. What source of what? Fears. Well, what lets you guys talk to it?
It was fair. You know, we compartmentalized that for many years and put it away, and you know, denial. I mean, my favorite thing was, I'm fine. You know, there's an acronym for FINE. It's fouled up, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. I was fine for 40-some years. But you're afraid of what somebody might think of you. In my case, I was afraid I might lose my job because I might lose my medical with the FAA. It's fair, and you don't want to admit you have a problem. You don't want to admit you got a problem. I couldn't even admit I had a problem to my wife.
Mine was, because most of the stuff I did was special ops, I was threatened that I would go to jail if I ever released any information about Laos. And I believed them. And so I just said, okay, I'm going to forget it. My wife didn't even know I was wounded in Laos because they made sure I was healed by the time I got back. And so I never told her. She learned in 2013 for the first time when I was in the psychiatric ward up in Seattle. Fear. I just didn't want to acknowledge what I had done. You know, you don't acknowledge to people that you've basically killed women and children, even though it wasn't your fault. The NVA would raid the villages and put them in front, so they were the first ones to go. You don't know that until the next day. But it's just, I put it away in my mind, and I said, okay, I'm going to forget about all this, because if I mention this to anybody, I mean, my friends are going to leave me. I mean, there's no doubt about it if I really told my story. And but I think that was the biggest thing. And most Vietnam vets don't talk about it. Korean vets don't talk about it. World War II vets don't talk about it, because they don't want people to know what they have to do or to bring that memory up. And I locked my memory in my head, and my problem was my head got full, and it broke out. And it broke out with seizures, memory losses, anger. You know, it's unbelievable until I got released. I was in denial. I mean, 43 years, I have PTSD? I told the doctors, you're more nuts than I am. You know, but it's true. And I learned you need to go get help. And the best help I ever got was from other vets. Amen. Because I found out their story isn't as so off than mine is. It's all in the same. You may be in a different service, but it's the same story every single time. And you don't have to be in combat. You know, you can be in the support group, you know, out there and seeing your friends not come back. You know, you see teams go out, but you don't see teams come back in. And that can be hard too.
Somebody has to wash out the vehicle after the bodies have been exploded up and around inside. One more.
Repeat that acronym for FINE.
Fine.
Well, I'll say fouled up, but there's another word. That word that I used a million times. Fouled up, insecure, neurotic, and emotional.
All righty. All righty. We need to shut this down. We could probably go a long time. I'm going to ask my chaplains to put their hands on our warriors. That means we put them on each other. And I would like to lead us in prayer, and I'd ask you gentlemen to join me. Extend your hands to these. It's called a holy hug, and I believe hugs, not drugs. Father in heaven, I thank you for these men, these two representatives of the generation that left to do their nation's bidding, and yet when they came home, they were rejected. They were scorned. They were called baby killers. We were spat upon. We wore wigs so that people didn't know that we had short hair. And we never got a parade. We were never welcomed home. So tonight, this afternoon, together we say welcome home. We say, you served for us. We share your pain. Your guilt is our guilt. Your honor is bestowed from us. And Lord, continue to work in these men. May they continue to share their story and help others who are still trapped in the memories of their minds, who feel that they cannot share, but help them, Lord, to come to that point of finding hope and finding healing. These things I pray in the name of Jesus, the captain of our salvation. Amen. Amen. God bless you. By the way, you in churches on Veterans Day, honor your veterans. Put a banner out front. That'll get people inside, and do a good ceremony. When you have men's retreats, scholarship veterans, bring them into your men's groups, bring them in. That's what they need.